Please welcome David Lister. He's going to be talking about the digital home, backdooring the digital home.
Great, thanks. Thanks everyone. How's it going? This is backdooring the digital home. It's the mic. The mic is actually not working for purposes of the PA, but it does work for purposes of the video later. So audio will be recorded, but it doesn't. The speakers in here don't work. So I'll speak loud. Okay. So just a brief introduction. Who am I? I'm David Lister. My background is a security consultant. That's what I do currently for my day job. Penetration testing, and occasionally do research and things that I find interesting. My credentials, MSIT and infrastructure assurance. It's a fancy way of saying I really like security, so I went back to school to study it even more. I got my master's. Also got some certs like the Offensive Security Certified Professional, CEH, CSSP, stuff like that. And I'm really interested in, I like to find vulnerabilities and holes in systems and things like that. So it's always been an interest of mine. Now it's my primary job. So other interests of mine are drones and SCADA systems. I did SCADA training at Black Hat. It was actually really good. I recommend it for anyone next year looking for learn some more about industrial control systems. There's my contact info, and I can give it to you later in detail if you're interested. So, topic background, and everybody let me know if you can't hear me. Okay, and so what is a digital home? Think of a house where everything is connected. So you've got thermostats, utility meters, like smart meters that provide power to your house, cameras, security systems, electrical outlets. There's all kinds of apps and all kinds of products you can buy that either come, from the utility or that you could buy at Best Buy and plug in. And so it's kind of like everybody's talking about the Internet of Things. So just kind of think of it like an intranet of things. So there's a bunch of things in your house that are all connected together. And so similar to an industrial control system, when something happens like temperature drops in your house, the thermostat is going to automatically adjust for that. And so the difference between a normal thermostat and a smart thermostat like a Nest or something else usually is that they have an app that goes along with it, or they're connected wirelessly through, to some other system. And so another example, if a motion sensor is triggered, capture video, send an email, or contact the monitoring center. Today I'm going to talk about my experience so far with this type of system. And there's a few things I've found. In addition to that, I'm going to go over an attack scenario that I think is, it's something to definitely worry about with this type of system. So my motivations, why did I look at this system? What was I doing? So I had a security system like this one. A lot of you might have one in your house. It's got the old school keypad. I wanted to be able to check on things remotely. I wanted to drive it to my house and, arm or disarm the alarm and, do all those cool things. And, I looked at adding onto this system, and there was people that could come and they could add on to the old school alarm motherboard, and it would do some stuff. But I thought, well, I want to try this like all-in-one integrated system. And, but I was curious, how easy it would be to subvert the new system. With all these new features, I'm supposed to be more secure, right? But would I be less secure because of the new system? So going from the old system to these new controls, having a touch screen and a mobile app and a web app and all this kind of stuff. So my approach, first thing, get my hands on one of these. I actually ended up getting my hands on two of them so I could compare them. And I'm not going to say the vendor today, just in fairness to the vendor. They're in the process of finding things and notifying them responsibly. Break everything down into components and test each component individually. Then, of course, look at the communications in between and just kind of at a high level say, what would an attacker do? What are the entry points? How would somebody if they wanted to get into my house and they saw it was this type of system, what would they do? So this system's overview, this digital home system, which is an alarm system, right? And so it has several components. I called the vendor. The vendor also sells internet access and TV. They showed up at my house, and they brought all these things. And I had new toys to play with. And so it was an Android-based touchscreen with GPS, an 802.11 wireless router, 802.11 wireless IP cameras, hardwired sensors, which they actually ripped out the old motherboard from the existing alarm, leaving the hardwired sensors, but replaced the motherboard. And I'll show you that in more detail in a second. Zigbee wireless sensors. They added some wireless sensors. They also added cellular connectivity and internet connectivity as a component of it. It's needed for the system to work properly. Also the mobile and web apps. And you can have optional things like people have door locks connecting to this thing. You have other sensors. You can connect your thermostat. You can do things like that. So here's an overview of the communications. So here's kind of the brain system of the Android touchscreen. It pretty much communicates with everything in the system, and everything goes through it. The way it talks to the rest of the world is it talks Zigbee to the serial alarm panel, which is the old school alarm motherboard they updated. The IR sensors, one is Zigbee, and you can have more, of course. You can control outlets with it, thermostats. It does all these Zigbee things over wireless. And so the cameras, as part of the system, talk 802.11 over this router to this touchscreen. It gets GPS data from satellites. It has GSM backup embedded into it. It's got a SIM in the actual touchscreen. And then the vendor's application servers, of course, your laptop, your phone, or wherever you're getting it from, talk to their backend and their customer database, and you can send out a dispatch when necessary. So that's kind of how it all ties together, communications. And also, so notice anything about the brains of the system, all of its communication. So this brain of the system here, that everything depends on, every connection to it is entirely wireless. So that kind of gave me cause for concern. There is an optional Ethernet module for it, but most people aren't going to go and they don't deploy it that way. Everything is wireless. So what does that mean? It must accept any interference received. Part 15 FCC rules. So it's possible, I didn't try this, to disrupt all the wireless communications to that brain. But that wasn't really the goal of what I wanted to do with this, although it's entirely possible. So I compared two installations of the same vendor's system. Other vendors exist. They implement certain parts of the system themselves, but there's other parts of it that are kind of off the shelf, like the touchscreen. I found that each one it's got potential and actual vulnerabilities in it. So we'll take a look at a few of these. The first one is the wireless router. Everyone's like, okay, it's a wireless router. That's great, not a big deal. Except for the fact that they give everyone a vulnerable wireless router. So, thanks, vendor. And, they might say, the only way to get to that router, or do anything with it is, to have physical access to it. And so that might be true. However, kind of the premise of this whole attack is if somebody sees that I have this system and they come into my house and they want to take control of it later, they can basically backdoor the system. And so then they can come back without even being there later and interact with the system and do all that stuff. And so I was just very curious, first of all, about the wireless key that they use for this network, because I thought, well, if it's something really weak or simple, and they don't provide you with the pre-shared key, and I was looking online in forums and stuff like that, and a lot of people had kind of the same question. They're like, hey, I have this vendor XYZ system. It uses wireless. They provide me a wireless router, but they don't give me the key. Does anyone know how to find the key? And so I'm looking through all this stuff, and I was like, well, let me just pop it open. And so I popped it open and used this JTAG serial adapter, and was able to get a serial console. So I was like, okay, cool. So I'm looking at it, and I get the key out, and then I'm able to, become part of the network. And I do some more research, and I found that there was a much easier way. And so I didn't need to open the router at all. I could just use this thing called Telnet Enable. And for those of you who are familiar with Telnet Enable, and it's just it's a tool. There's different versions of it. There's a Python version. There's a C version you can compile. And basically what Telnet Enable does, as you can see here, is you get on the network, you plug into the router, you get its MAC address, and then you create this packet. And then you run the Telnet Enable command. It's kind of hard to see here. But you run the Telnet Enable command, it creates this packet, and then you use Netcat to send the packet to the router. And so apparently it's some kind of like backdoor that's in most Netgear routers, and the password is like gear guy, gear dog. So you create this packet, and you can see I try to telnet to the router first. I haven't sent the packet yet, I've created it. And so I'm using Netcat here to send the packet and try to telnet to the router again, and boom, open WRT. And so now I have full access to the Netgear wireless router. And so kind of that made me think, well, if somebody had access to my house and knew about this and knew about this system, they could backdoor my house security system. They could perform this attack to take over the router. And so
at this point you're doing this, you're sending this crafted packet over the local wireless network.
Over the Ethernet, yeah. But it could be done if you were able to associate to the network, to the wireless network. If you were to become part of that also, you could do it over the wireless network too. And so any Netgear routers out there within a certain list of them are vulnerable to the same backdoor. It's not something that I found, it's something that I found online, that there was already a tool for. So Telnet with no password. So once inside, was able to determine the key. I didn't need to do all that after all. And then I was able to clone the wireless network. And so with WPA PSK networks, you can't just sniff everyone's traffic. You've got to man-in-the-middle attack it directly. Or if you are the access point, you can see everyone's traffic. And so what I wanted to do was become the access point that I can see all the traffic coming in and out from all those different devices over wireless. So the next step was a wireless camera. I did kind of the same thing. I couldn't get access to it. I can get a read-only console. It didn't take input over the JTAG adapter. The default passwords didn't work. I wanted to intercept the passwords set by the vendor to see if they were static, or to see does my neighbor, if he has the same system, does he have the same passwords? Can he view my stuff, or vice versa. And so it turns out these are dynamically created by the touchscreen on setup. However, it is possible to sniff the passwords in clear text because you become the access point. The Android touchscreen, the one commonality is there's a touchscreen manufactured by iControl. I have not identified any vulnerabilities in this particular touchscreen itself. It's more like the implementation of the system. Several vendors use it. Again, it's the brains of the system. Everything goes to it and through it to the rest of the system. It runs Android. Some of the things I've thought about doing, I haven't had time yet, is to try to put it in debug mode, try to somehow get access to that to see kind of what about you, because you can install apps on it, right? And so now that I'm minimizing the traffic wirelessly, it's going through my rogue access point to download apps that you can add. So if it doesn't check, the validity of the apps to see if they're signed, maybe I can install an app on it that's malicious and take over the whole system that way. So it's just more, more things. Like I said, I haven't identified anything specifically yet. I'm just planning to look at that more. So again, you can install apps. The system has a 24-hour battery per the techs that installed it. And so again, if you went in and you unplugged that battery and you wait a day, you can go back and they have no alarm. Your alarm there's no alarm. So simply by removing the battery. But again, it's a different sort of attack. It's got USB, SD card, Ethernet connections, 802.11, Zigbee connectivity built in. So here's the hardwired controller. And so this is the alarm motherboard. And there's like a Zigbee little antenna module that sticks out of it. And this is how it talks to the sensors that were already wired into the house over Zigbee. It's basically serial over wireless. Again, you can disrupt that. And so if you were to basically interfere with that wireless connection and it never received the signal that doors were opened or windows or motion sensors, then it would never know, So there's a mobile app. So it's got several different components. You can control everything through the mobile app. You can see the cameras. You can arm and disarm the system. You can see history, status, when people are home, when they're not home. So it's kind of scary, that if someone were to be able to take control of that app, they could, definitely see all that stuff too. And so hopefully I took all the personal information out of here. But using burp proxy, it was possible to minimum the application's traffic to see the API calls that were being made. And, I would see things like you could call a logout function and get a session ID, which could then be used to do other things. But, I didn't dig too far into the mobile app, but it's definitely, yeah. And, there's a lot of potential for abuse there. So it kind of concerned me that, it was just kind of out there. The API that can talk to your system and view your cameras and expose all of those sensors over the internet. Again, similar to a SCADA system, it seems like they would want that traffic to, maybe be handled a different way. I'm not sure exactly how, but maybe a different way. Uh-huh.
You said that you've got a JSession ID for authentication, but on logout. How do you log out without having?
So you just send this request to the logout function, and it says, "Oh, okay, here's a session ID," and yeah, like okay, thanks, all right. And so exactly, you can use that session ID to do other stuff, and it doesn't appear to work anymore, which is good. So, yeah. Very concerning. There's the web application interface. You log in through the web browser, see all the same stuff. So putting it all together, this is kind of like the attack that, if I was trying to break into my own house and, bypass the security system, what would I do? And so using the Raspberry Pi along with physical access, and I went with the Pi because I don't think I put the picture in here of the Raspberry Pi that I put together for this. So basically it's just a Raspberry Pi running Kali, Linux, and it had a battery on it, a Bluetooth adapter for the keyboard, and which you didn't really need for this if you had it pre-set up, but I was just doing that for my research. And so that battery would probably last, a week or so easily running that system. And it had a wireless card, a TP-Link wireless adapter. And so using that, it's possible to plug it in, and I could automate this, given more time, right? Because all it's doing is it's plugging in, it's getting the MAC address of the gateway that is plugged into the Netgear, and it's saying, okay, I'm going to create this packet specific to that MAC address, sends it over layer 2, and then it gets access to the router over Telnet. Telnet's in, grabs a key.
Specifically Telnet.
Yeah. So but this attack basically enables Telnet. on the router without authentication. And so once you get access to the netgear, you can basically take its place, and then all the wireless communication goes through you, so you control it, so you could stop packets from ever leaving the network if you wanted to, like maybe a packet that said, hey, there's an alarm going on, or whatever else you wanted to. And so now that we have a backdoor into the system, additional attacks could be launched. So you could also add a Zigbee, adapter to it and attack the Zigbee from this thing. You could, just attack the Zigbee, or you could attack the Wi-Fi, minimum all that traffic, and attack the Zigbee too. You could, just like anything that you could plant physically in a building, you could do. But the thing is, usually with a couple of minutes of access, you're not going to be able to get full control of the main access point that all the traffic goes through, which is what's happening here. And so you can see here. So basically, to kind of demonstrate how much time I have left, here you can see basically once you become the access point, you can sniff all the traffic. And also, what I did was I basically forwarded the administration interface for the camera out to just a cloud server on AWS, and I can access the internal, I can access the internal administration page for that camera and view the video without even going through their portal. So I'm going through my Raspberry Pi, and I can show you that here in a second. It's kind of hard to see what's going on there, but basically I was sniffing the traffic. I grabbed the base 64 basic authentication request that the Android touchscreen was sending to the wireless camera over HTTP, unencrypted, clear text, basic authentication. I base 64 decode the string, and now I have the admin password for the camera. So I'm able to not only configure it, maybe I could turn it off whenever I wanted to, or, like I said, just view the video, see when they're home. Cool. So that's what's going on there. Decoding the key just from sniffing the traffic going through the wireless. You can see there what I can actually do is that's the camera interface, but I can I'll go into a demo of that in a second. I can actually show you guys that here live. So again, it's possible to sniff any traffic and block the traffic occurring on that wireless network. Anytime a sensor is triggered, the monitoring center must receive a disarm signal within 30 seconds, or an alarm will trigger. You could catch a disarm event and replay it. You could block the Zigbee, like I was talking about, or block any communication between the touchscreen and monitoring center at all, if you wanted to, during a certain period of time. So, demo time. So, what I can do is this running. Show you this over here. So what I've done here is I've logged in from my laptop here. I'm logged into my cloud server. And all my cloud server is doing is it's listening on some ports. You can see, make that bigger. And it doesn't like that sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. It's okay. Yeah. Basically, you can't see it here in the output of the process listing, but like I said, the keyboard. Yeah. You can see that basically, ports are being forwarded out of my home network to the cloud server. I am then forwarding those ports to my laptop. Well, one port in particular, port 80. And if I go to you can see that I can access my network camera from here. So you can view video, whatever you want to do, type that password in, and you're good to go. So let's see here. And okay. So conclusions, right? And if y'all want to see the video, I can bring that back up here in a second. I'll just go through the conclusions. So protect the access point. It's a central hub. The vendor shouldn't be handing out a security system with known vulnerabilities. And each vendor implements its own API, web portal, and mobile app. And so it's a large attack surface for a sensitive system. And so this is just one way in which you could attack it. There's other ways. And again, yes, it's just, it's protecting a house, but it's a security system. And, with a high value enough target, it's something that somebody might want to go after, So that's pretty much it. Further research, next steps, I'm going to look further into the mobile and web app, examine Zigbee communications, see if I can, intercept or hinder the GSM signal, and potentially gain access to the alarm network with their permission, of course. And that's pretty much it. Any questions?
If I understood correctly, you were saying that before the system was implemented, it was a more traditional older system.
Right.
It's kind of tacked on. So it's kind of it amounts to a big downgrade in security.
Right. Yeah. So, before, I had a closed circuit video and a closed circuit alarm system. I mean, there was no wireless component of it at all. Now there's wireless components. There's, different types of wireless components. There's application components. There's hardware security components. There's all kinds of moving pieces that have now really exposed, me using this system to a lot more attacks. Yeah, so the touchscreen has GPS built in. I'm not sure. I want to take it and I'm just going to move the touchscreen around town and see what happens. See if I can still. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's for the responders, maybe. So they can, even though they have an address, maybe they. I don't know.
The touchscreen on the cellular network, if you go around town, can you control the stuff in your house?
So the touchscreen, I actually took the SIM out and I put it in a phone that was just unlocked to see if I could access the internet. It doesn't seem to. I also couldn't pull the APN information off of it. I was going to see if I could get on that mobile network. But it doesn't appear to have internet access. It's like the equivalent of what they call a dry pair, but a wireless one. And so apparently it's pretty common. These alarm companies use GSM monitoring, and so they have their own GSM network through other providers that it only connects to them using some other protocol, like some serial protocol, or sends some packet or something to their system only, but it doesn't go through the internet on the GSM side.
Would you be able to use a touchscreen anywhere?
Yeah, you could. Well, the touchscreen will only associate with that particular access point, and you have to clone the MAC address too. But it'll still work. You just won't be able to access any of the internet-enabled things. If you completely pull out the wireless router, you can still like disarm and arm the system and view the status of that, but you cannot view the status of the cameras. You can't obviously download any apps to it. You can't do that kind of thing. So there's certain features that are disabled when the wireless is down. Mostly the cameras. So, all right, that's pretty much it. Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate you sticking around.